Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by White House reporter Naomi Lim. Naomi, there's some impatience by the Democratic base about this upcoming Supreme Court nomination. Can you talk a little bit about what Democrats are frustrated about from the White House and what they'd like to see?
I think for Democrats, last year the Biden administration was defined by what it couldn't achieve. And this year, replacing Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer is something that he can, granted if all Democratic senators are in good health.
Sure.
What they're really nervous about is the speed of the timeline. Strategists like Stephanie Cutter, who was Sonia Sotomayor's Sherpa, has sort of implored Biden to take a leaf out of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's book, where he expedited Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett's nomination within days just before the 2020 election. And
Right.
I think they want something like that. And I think you can understand where they're coming from when you think about just the intra-party fights that we've witnessed over the past year. They don't want their own side to sort of pick apart their different nominees and not show a united front. So I think that's something what they're getting a little bit agitated about heading into the midterm cycle.
So there are some people who claim that the president has sort of been caught flat-footed by a number of crises that have hit. Talk a little bit about whether President Biden seems prepared when dealing with, certain things like COVID and other things that have come up during his term.
Yeah, so an example that we're seeing recently is Democratic governors getting in front of the administration when it comes to relaxing pandemic restrictions like masking, vaccination statuses, things like that. And I think that there's a sense that the Biden administration is being cautious because they were burnt like last summer when sort of Biden announced that we'd have a summer of freedom when vaccinations were getting rolled out. And I think because we're seeing his polling slide in areas that were initially strengths, like his pandemic response, I think they're trying to be, not trying to put the horse before the cart when it comes to things like that. But it's a trend that they may need to be wary of as they try to prove their competence again to voters.
You've mentioned things that the White House has been unable to do, and one of those things was obviously Build Back Better, which they had hoped they'd pass before Christmas. Here we are now, and there isn't even really a bill. There are some Democrats, though, that would like to focus on a specific component of that sprawling package to revive it. What are they talking about?
Well, when West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin sort of put an end to the Build Back Better plan as we knew it, there was sort of speculation, or even Biden said himself, that he would tackle it in chunks. Now, obviously, that can come down to the social welfare side of it or the climate side of it. And I'm finding that Democrats are pushing for the climate side because they think that it's something that will energize the more left members of their party that are disenchanted with the administration. At the same time, there could be more bipartisan support in terms of in comparison to other more sweeping programs like the child tax credit and things like that. And then there's also the sense that with emerging threats like Russia and the Ukraine tensions abroad, that the energy sector is something that they can tackle through this. Whether their calls are heard by the administration remains to be seen. I think we've seen this week, particularly in response to poor economic data with inflation, the White House is sort of leaning on how Build Back Better can help with that response.
Sure.
And we saw, our White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki sort of lean on things about how they can lower costs with whether it's healthcare or childcare or even tax reform. So I think that, maybe those calls are not being heeded, at least at the moment.
Does President Biden have a problem keeping his promises?
I think at the moment we're seeing that, and that's something that we're also seeing in polling. Trust numbers with the president are becoming more eroded. I think part of that is due to the pandemic. People thought that we would be over it by now. Then we saw the confidence argument being dismantled by his Afghanistan response. And then obviously we've seen most recently just his handling of internal staff problems, like top scientist Eric Lander. On Inauguration Day, Biden sort of promised that he would fire on the spot anybody who disrespected their colleagues. And we've found out that there's been an internal investigation into how Eric Lander mistreated subordinates, whether he bullied them or sort of had retaliatory measures against them. And he was still in a job until the White House was pressed by the press. He's since tendered his resignation, but it just leaves people and sources have sort of told me that it kind of asks the question, you know, what else won't he keep his promise on?
It's not really what people are talking about when they mention the bully pulpit. Thank you, Naomi. You can read Naomi and the rest of our political team's coverage at WashingtonExaminer.com.